And they're off. Here we go.
Further Faster, the best independently owned outdoor store in the known universe. Whether you're out heading, climbing, paddling, tramping, running adventures, bike packing, look no further than Further Faster for all your gear and expertise. Head to 57A Buchan Street, Sydenham, Otutahi, Christchurch, or hit them up at furtherfaster.co.nz.
Listen like Further Faster, they're in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious. Go to Further Faster now.
Oh, Further Faster, they're in Christchurch. Rocky is hairy and so is Badger. Jules is nice and Jacob is delicious. Go to Further Faster now.
Dirt Church Radio.
Episode 287 of the Dirt Church Radio Trail and Ultra Marathon Podcast. I'm Matt Raymond.
And I am Eugene Bingham. Tēnā koutou katoa. No mai, hoki mai. Back to the car park. I realised that we didn't explain leading into the interview with Andrew last week that we were sitting in the car with him. And the interview started with him talking about the tidiness of the back of my car.
It is a very tidy car.
Which, if you didn't know that's where we were, would have been a bit like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
But anyway.
No, it is a very tidy car. And we've done a lot of our links and a lot of our catch-ups this year.
Yes.
At the at the car park at the trailhead.
Yeah, and I realised that what he didn't see was the toddler muddy gumboot prints that I was sitting on. So right. his compliments were a bit too much. Anyway, I think we're getting a bit off track. I got us a bit off track there. How you going, Matt Raymond?
Yeah, I'm going okay. I mean, you can hear from my voice that maybe I caught a cold from David Hellard off the internet because he had a cold. But, you know, the classic thing, run a race, hit your head, immunity's low, feel terrible for a week after and get frustrated. So that's where I'm living. Start to panic that I've only got 7 months to train for Tarawera. And but other than that, tickety boo. Tickety boo. What about yourself? I'm keen to catch up. Like, have you Aid Station podcast last week? We spoke about, you know, you've had some big thoughts to think. How have you been?
Yeah, just sort of. I'm booked in to go and see someone about getting on with some rehab. So I just want to get through that first, really.
Yeah.
So that's been my sole thinking at the moment. In the meantime, just carrying on with the swimming, the park run walking.
Yep.
We just saw Emma in the car park.
Park walking.
She was park running very fast with a pram, and I was park walking at the back, and she sped past last week on Saturday. So yeah, just carrying on. I have been dealing with the issue of every time I swim now.
Yes.
I sneeze afterwards.
That'd be the chlorine, mate.
And
the salt.
And the seawater. It's both.
So being microplastics.
Even my body is rejecting swimming.
Yes. As it should. As it should.
It's very odd. Anyway.
How long do you sneeze for?
Well, sometimes all day and even during the night.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel otherwise fine. Just sneezing. Can be annoying. Anyway. And in these post-COVID times, a bit embarrassing.
Yeah, that's right.
I feel like you need a big sign, don't you? I've just been swimming. That's it.
Yep, that's not COVID. I do have hepatitis though, or whatever. I don't know. But look.
I don't. Anyway. Hey, look, last weekend there was some racing action involving Kiwis in France that we missed. So it was the Mountain Running World Cup at Le Mont Blanc.
Le Mont Blanc.
Might have heard of it. How's this for stats? It was a 20-kilometre race, 1,850 metres of vert up and 600 metres down. Crazy. Anyway, Michael Sutton, he was 16th in his race. Nancy Zhang got a 10th in her race. And our friend of the show, one of the OGs, responsible for the logo, Sarah Douglas, she came 24th and third in her age group.
That's fantastic.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. And now we've got the Olympics on. How long till trail running hits the Olympics?
I think I would give it, I reckon trail running will hit the Olympics within the next 3 cycles. But I think that what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to do what they do in the cross-country mountain biking, where they have specific things. So in mountain biking, they have to have a certain drop, they have to have a rock garden, they have to have blah, 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 blah. So I think you're going to have to do that. So you're going to have like shitty aid station pizza. You're going to have a character who is in the in the manifestly wrong starting corral. You're going to have all that kind of cultural stuff.
You have to have asked what a seam seal jacket is three
That's
times.
Exactly right. We have to have an
before
annoying
you start.
Facebook group.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah, all those things. You have to have a jar of lollies, and one of them contains a contagious disease.
Yes. Yeah.
And you have to put your hand in and randomly grab one.
Yes. Communal Vaseline. All of that.
All those things. That's going to be a great event. It's going to be a great event. No, that's good thinking, mate.
It would. I mean, I guess the thing that would separate it would be where would you go, and you'd have to have it. And this is not to make it. You wouldn't want to do like an Ursat's marathon, because the marathon's amazing, but then just have a bunch of people turn up and do a marathon slightly off road would be quite boring.
Yeah, it's like when the World Cross Country races are held on like
golf courses.
Yeah, and it's like, really? I don't know. Maybe they could modify the equestrian cross-country course.
That's right. Exactly. That would be fantastic. That would be absolutely fantastic. Well, speaking about obstacles and modified courses and stuff and the intersection of that and running, let's crack on with our interview this week, thinking about our guest, David Hellard. I got the opportunity to catch up with David for a great old chat, and across the other side of the world, David is someone who is known to many people across the trail and ultra marathon world and running world as the creator, host of Bad Boy Running podcast. He also has worked on the Golden Trail circuit as an announcer there, and he is an entrepreneur, obstacle racer, adventure racer, and fervent runner. And he is the man behind Caffeine Bullet, which is something that's taking the trail-adjacent outdoor nutritional kind of space by storm. It's a caffeine chew and fantastic. And so we got together for a good old chat, and it was quite excellent because we're both quite digressive, chatty men, and wonderful. And please, listen to the end, because the greatest run ever at the end is absolutely, it's beautiful. So yeah, so huge ups to David. Thank you, man, for coming on. And the greatest run ever was pretty great.
Speaking of greatest run ever.
Greatest run ever.
Greatest run ever, brought to you by Squad Run. Give their 4-week special coaching trial a go. You can find the link on the website, which is www.dirtchurchradio.com. This is the part of the show where we ask you to ask us, to ask you to them, to ask us, to write into us and tell us your greatest run ever. It doesn't have to be a race or a mountain summit. It might just be a run around the block, something that's sung to you for some reason. Send it in to us at dirtchurchradio@gmail.com, and I know that didn't make sense. This one is from Benny Fraser. I'm sitting in my car on a beautiful winter's day in Tamaki Makaurau after what certainly feels like a greatest run ever. It wasn't a mountain summit or 52 loops at a backyard ultra. In fact, it wasn't even on the trails, which I've fallen in love with. I've forgotten why I run of late. I'd got bogged down in a goal I'd set for myself at the next event I'm training for. Running had become something I had to do. I needed my tempo training peaks to turn green, warm up in tempo X kilometers at marathon pace, heart rate below X, blah, 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 blah. If I'm going to reach my goal, I need to tick the box. And if I don't tick the box, I won't reach my goal. And if I don't reach my goal, who the hell am I? I've felt stretched thin of late. I have a young family, a puppy, I'm self-employed, I'm tired, and I always feel like I'm on the verge of getting sick. Running has gifted me so much over the last 4 years. As Mr. Matt Raymond, me, would say, running isn't therapy, but it is therapeutic. Damn right. And this has been the case for me. It's taught me the power of consistency, delayed gratification, and being part of a community. I can do hard things. I've had some incredible experience. Kepler, crossing the finish line at Tarawera 102 in tears with my mum and pregnant partner waiting at the finish line, running with mates and at 6 a.m. in the forest laughing and chahooing like madmen, just to name a few. As of late, running has become something I had to do, not something I got to do. Today, I had another run I had to do, a 10k easy into a 5k tempo. I parked up on Mission Bay after an early work meeting. It's a beautiful day, but I was dreading having to get this run done and hit the numbers. Just tick that box. Just get it over and done with, I said to myself as I waited for my GPS to load. Off I set. Before I'd run 100 metres, I bumped into Jamie Stevenson. Now, I'd only met Jamie a few times, but we'd had loads of mutual friends, and I always enjoyed our interaction. We started running and chatting. The conversation flowed. We talked about our families, our pets. I shared my story of running and my involvement with the Speed Freaks. I was inspired hearing about Jamie's running achievements and her goals, and after almost an hour running together, I said goodbye and turned to run back to the car with a big smile on my face. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. How lucky I was that I get to run. My pace sped up. I felt free and easy. I think this is called the runner's high. Pure joy. I had even had a few of those cheesy high fives with fellow runners running towards me. The world was smiling at me as I returned to my car. I stopped. I realised I hadn't looked at my watch the whole run. I took a moment to look over towards Rangitoto and thought, this is why I run. Thank you, Jamie, for the connection and inspiration, for reminding me that I get to run. I don't have to run. For you, it may have been just a midweek long run, but for me, my joy and gratitude for running returned, and that made it the greatest run ever. The funny thing is, after not being able to hit my numbers, I absolutely nailed my prescribed run without even trying.
Wow. I remember seeing them post about that run and the photo of joy on both of their faces, and I remember being so happy that those two cool people who we both know had just bumped into each other like that, and it's like, wow, the universe delivered something today. And then reading Ben's account of it and knowing, his mindset when he'd come into it, it just makes it all the more special and a reminder of how beautiful happenstance can be. And sometimes you don't get the run you want, but you get the run you need.
Yeah.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
And that thing about how he'd hit his pace. I mean, how often has that happened? You kind of give up, throw away your watch and go, and then you absolutely nail it. Just, yeah.
You talked about that one of your fastest marathons. You ran without a watch.
Yep. And when I finally cracked 20 minutes for 5K, I'd been trying, looking at my watch, and it was, 20:01, 20:07, da-da-da-da-da. And then the one time I was just like, I'm just not even going to look at my watch. And,
there you go.
And there you go. So there you go. It's about soaking it up, isn't it? Epic, Ben. Thank you so, so much. And so cool that you and Jamie got to run together. Two awesome people. Right. You can read Ben's account on the website and have a look at everyone else's who sent them into us, dirtchurchradio.com. Get inspired and send us your one. No, that's the website. The email address is dirtchurchradio@gmail.com. And thanks again to our friends at Squadron.
All right, let's get into it. My chat with the legendary David Hellard. Enjoy. Kia ora and good morning. Your side of the world, David Hellard. Welcome to Dirt Church Radio. How are you doing, man?
Well, I'm going to say good because it's good to be positive on a podcast. But I've been ill the whole week, and I've been ill for about 10 days, and so I've emerged. In fact, as you know, I checked in yesterday at this time because I was so confused and dazed by life. So my voice is returning. My energy levels are all right, thankfully. So yeah, I'm a lot better than I have been. This is probably the best way to put it. But I haven't run in about, an eternity. So we're on the road. We're on the mend.
We were just talking off. We were just talking off mic about that sort of circle of parenting life. Like, your boy's getting all the daycare bugs known to man. My boy's getting tattoos on the back of his hands. So it's it's that thing, isn't it? It's maybe I'm the ghost of Christmas. Was it the ghost of
Future?
Christmas?
Yeah.
Future?
I don't know how I feel if Herc had a tattoo on his hands. The thing is, in my head, I'm going to get every tattoo my child gets because I'm going to be one of those. I'm going to be one of those
Right.
dick parents. So actually, I'd probably be quite annoyed if my child got a tattoo on their hand because I'd be like, "Oh no, I've got to get a tattoo on my hand." What's the tattoo of, by the way?
It says it what does it say? It says glory on the back of
nice.
his hand. Funny story. He got one on the back of. He got one on his neck, and I'd just run a backyard ultramarathon and came home and was feeling. I'd been somewhere. It was on the back of a run. It was either the backyard or I'd been to Christchurch and been destroyed in this terrible thing called the skedaddle. And I came home and I was like, is that a tattoo on the back of your neck? And on your neck? And he was like, yeah, Dad, it is. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I can't talk. I've got a ton of them, but yeah, it's you've got that to look forward to. Maybe.
Maybe
he won't. Maybe he'll be like,
I get the sense the way society works. In 20 years' time, I think tattoos are probably going to be pretty different to now. It could be they're doing something very different, but I think every other generation I think you're less likely. It seems 10 years ago was almost tattoo peak with arm sleeves. Maybe in the UK it seems to have been. So it wouldn't surprise me if in 20 years' time, actually, no one has a tattoo and everyone's back smoking.
And you'd be safe. Yeah, you'd be safe. Yeah, everyone will be back on the camel lights. Or if there is such a thing, the Marlboro lights. But it seemed like the thing with the tattoos, it was all, definitely it was peak, but it seems like the younger generation now, hands, necks,
are very visible.
It's very, very visible, and that's cool too. But this isn't Tattoo Church Radio.
So you can tell I get distracted on
No, as do I. Look, for those who don't, special treat. You actually, there's lots. Do you say that not all runners are podcasters, but all podcasters are runners? I'm not sure. But like you are the first sort of proper running podcaster we've had on Dirt Church Radio, which is amazing.
I mean,
for those
I'd say we're certainly not a proper one, but we certainly exist. We exist, if that makes us proper.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. What constitutes proper these days? But look, you're an entrepreneur, podcaster, and you're a public speaker, which has grown off the back of running. Starting off from the beginning, taking it back, what was your first taste of the sport?
I mean, I'd almost, the wording of the question is difficult because I'd almost say I didn't enter it as a sport, and maybe I'm being too analytical, but my dad was a Hash House Harrier. Have you heard of them?
Right. Oh yeah. Hash House Harriers. There's a strong tradition.
Oh, but I mean, it seems to be a bit of a dying club in some ways. Sadly, in some ways, it hasn't evolved with the times. But
with the times.
I mean, I did that as a kid because my dad was in the army, so we go around the world, and I hated cross country, but actually, the hash was always fun because you were young, and yet you could be quicker than adults. And then you got a beer at the end of it, or you got a shandy, or you got a pie, or you got some crisps. And so that's something we did on school holidays because I was at like an army boarding school. And but then I gave up sport completely at uni because I was right in the city. Tennis was the game I liked, and turned up and it was apparent that everyone in the first team was there from last year. They were going to get no new players, and so I just have to pay money to give these people money to go and play without me. So I just gave up sport other than darts until I broke up with my girlfriend, realised I was getting moobs about the age of mid-20s, and thought, well, why didn't I go hashing again? I've got all this spare time, and I really loved it. It was, I don't know what they're like in Wellington. Like in the UK, some hashes are great. Some of them are just full of people my dad's age, and they haven't really refreshed, which is nice in some ways because you can connect with a different generation. But I just love the fact you could, in a place like London, you could tear apart the town, and no one knows the city like a hasher, because they're almost like a black cab. They've run in places you've never run, you've never walked, because the trail, it's almost like water. It finds the routes that no one else is going down. And I've got a map of London where I know for example, in Notting Hill, there's a door at the end of a cul-de-sac covered in green moss that you can open the door and come out on a high street that no one knows is there. But every time you run in that area, you'll go down these certain alleyways and you'll end up at this door. And so I just love it was social. it was healthy. I could run fast because you only have to run for like a minute before you stop. So you feel fast even though you're massively unfit. And you actually got to I've got such a different relationship with my city and life now, because everything we do is running. Every meeting I go to, I run there. Every time I go to the pub, I run there. Every time I go to a gig, weddings, everything is running, because I'm so used to just using the streets instead of buses, cars, tubes. So a long-winded route, but that was my routine. The company I was working for, big management consultancy, were doing, why don't we do a marathon for charity? Did it, loved the training, got into it, and then it just kind of blossomed from there.
The rest is history. It strikes me, one of my favorite things to do is run through a city. And I can't imagine, and, being a hometown Auckland boy, going for a run in the city is amazing. But I can't imagine running in a place like London, which has been around since the Romans.
Yeah.
Pre-Romans. It's been there for a long, long time.
And actually, almost, because the older the city, I think the more fun it is to run. So, and this is why partly I love London. So it's not a London. I'm not trying to pitch London. I should be sponsored by the tourist board. But because this is the one thing, if I think about having a monarchy, the one thing that over anything else that I think for me is why it's been great. You've got all these royal parks that none of us peasants were allowed to go in for years, because it was the hunting ground, or it was the preserve of the rich. And so if you look at someone like Paris that had its glorious revolution, all the parks are turned into buildings, and they've got so little green space. Whereas London now, you've got these walks that are kind of 20-mile walks that just link up park to park to park. And you almost can't go more than 400 meters anywhere in the city without there being some little kind of bloom of greenery or some little space. So being able to, and because it's not being made in a grid structure, it's not being planned, there's thousands of different routes to get to places. And so you can have a completely different experience with your journeys just by going one road to the left. And you suddenly, because of the war and the way it's bombed buildings, you're suddenly in these, you could be in some new builds, or with some great architecture, or you could be in some kind of council houses that have been around in the 60s, but have this kind of brutalist Goldfinger, the designer style, or you could be suddenly in this little park area where you're like, wow, these buildings are so old. And yeah, it's amazing. But I'd say to anyone, whenever you go to a new city, just run it. Whether I'm in Chengdu in China, or we're going to, even in what, obviously not the most dangerous places, but when we're in Colombo, we're just running around Bogota, and it's, you just see different things that, and I've done that in Afghanistan, I've done it in Somaliland. You meet people you're never going to meet, and you capture moments of people's lives that you can't do in a park, that you can't do in a run group. You're basically getting a snapshot of a city's life that you can't do otherwise. You can't do it as a cyclist. It's just running that gives you that.
No. Yeah. I know that Eugene, the co-host, is who's unfortunately busy. He's also run in Afghanistan.
Oh, no way.
And he's up in Bamiyan.
Oh, same,
he was
same.
looking for work, and
that's where I was. Oh, cool.
Right. And he said it was incredible. Not being nearly murdered by traffic, notwithstanding. He said that was the most kind of. But again, cradle of civilization. I'm trying to think of the most exotic place I ran. Well, Fiji, actually. I ran from a little place into a little town called Singatoka, so probably about 15k into the town, along some. And
did you witness things that your head just would never predicted you'd seen?
No. Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Never predicted you'd seen. Interacted with locals that people like this one woman. She actually hit me, slapped me in a kind of a good-natured way. But like, what are you up? That kind of like, you should be on the tourist bus, mate.
This makes no sense to me.
I sort of am on the. Yeah. What are you doing? You could be on the bus. No, that was cool. But I mean, you've done your charity marathon for your corporate thing. I mean, then what was the attraction to do like obstacle racing and then on to adventure racing?
That was I've had a whole string of kind of luck along the way. So I'd won a race. I then, because of that, was featured in a magazine because they were looking for like everyday race winners doing who are these people that win these random things? They took a picture of my kitchen. In the background was a pack of Goodness Shakes drink because they said, we need this to look more running. Have you got any products? So I just put out, all the stuff you get in bags at the end of races. So I put that out as if I was, I don't know, Mr. Product Guy. And Goodness Shakes saw it and said, thank you for featuring us in the magazine. Do you want to join our race team to do this obstacle race series? And we then travelled these races around the UK for 1 year. I was the slowest guy in the team by some margin, but thankfully we were all quicker than anyone else doing these races. So it would be like, it's a new product they were launching called Nectar. So we'd come in, and actually this guy called Gareth, he wasn't very quick either. So maybe I was second slowest. But yes, but I then became very good friends with a guy called Ross, who very good runner, who loved obstacle racing as well. We decided to join a team with just so happened, do you know John Albon? So he's 5 times world obstacle race champion, 3 times Spartan champion, like world's toughest mudder champion. He's won Rombot Marathon. He's world trail champion. He's Sky Race Series world champion. Yeah, he's pretty good. He was also a buddy as well. So we just formed this team together as a bit of a jolly. It's like, why didn't we're doing these races, we're traveling together. We'd done Red Bull Steeplechase, an amazing race that used to exist in the UK, together, and just had the best weekend where we traveled together. You stayed together the night before, you go and blitz these races. You feel special because all the, Red Bull treat you well anyway, but when you do well at a Red Bull race, they treat you really well. And we'd then have like massive nights out afterwards. And so we just thought, why don't we get some free stuff for this? Formed the team, found my best mate Miller, who's famous in the UK because she won a Special Forces SAS Navy SEAL TV show. She joined, and then we just got all these sponsors. We were Innovate OCR, British Military Fitness sponsored us, Cliff Bar sponsored us, Dry Robe. We launched Dry Robe into obstacle racing, and it was at the time. I can't think. It's maybe trail running. How that feels a bit now, or ultra running in some countries. It was just as that sport was about to explode. So actually, anyone who was attracted to shiny things, which I very much am, was going into that sport because it was just fun. It was suddenly, we'd been on social media for a few years, and everyone suddenly wanted that picture of them saying, I'm a weekend warrior. And so we were just in it at the right time. There was money flooding in. There was crazy prize money. Even now, compared to, you could win one of the biggest trail marathons in the world and probably get less than an obstacle race. And so, it just collided.
It's mad, eh? It's a big. In New Zealand, and I mean, I don't have the experience of that. It seemed like it was a big kind of corporate well-being thing, and they were sort of super popular for a while. I think there's a bit of controversy. I think a bunch of people got electrocuted. Something happened. Like there was one of those things, they were bear crawling through the mud, and I think a couple of people got electrocuted here, and not dead, but more bang than their corporate buck, I think, maybe that they're expecting, and maybe there was something with that. But certainly we had a couple of people who went to that world's toughest ultra mother thing, and it was like 24 hours of doing unspeakable things. What was the pivot to adventure racing? You were like, hey, should we find something harder?
I just wasn't very good at obstacle racing. It's probably more what it was. I think we all do what rewards us, and we all could have. So John obviously was amazing, and he was better than us at everything, and also loved it. And I just didn't enjoy. I loved the races, but then I just don't like being in a gym, and I didn't want to be in a gym training, getting stronger. It was quite hard in central London to really do a lot of good technical training for the obstacle courses, and they're getting more and more technical. So my advantage was my running, and I'd basically be slowed down by any obstacles. So in the early days, my running would get me there. But by the end of it, I was like, I'm going to have to actually get good at obstacles to compete, which is how it should be. But I became a long distance specialist, where if there was a longer run, the other teammates who were all quicker than me would be like, we can't be asked to do this. Dave, you go and do it. Now's your time to like get a podium. And like, yes. And so I think I've always been good at, because it crossed over with the podcast, I was then aware that actually the story became as big a part of the appeal as success, because I've always, everyone likes to do well. I've always been very good at sniffing when I can be better than anyone else at an event rather than necessarily good. And but then when you combine those two, suddenly it's like, well, actually, adventure racing I love anyway. It's so fun. I love the element of risk and the navigation and the combination of sports. It was. I then just started thinking, well, actually, what will be an interesting story for the listeners, but also what's going to excite me, and what's an adventure. And actually, when I think I came fourth in Afghanistan, and with where there was no competition at all, because I just shat myself all the way around the course, and that was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. And in any performance basis, it was complete failure, but actually it was such an adventure. And so suddenly my life turned. I was seeking more the journey than the goal, I guess.
So that was the marathon of Afghanistan.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Some interesting, and this is a good pivot, talk about a story and talk about, that's funny, isn't it? Like, how they say 7 degrees of separation? In New Zealand, it's about 2, because everyone's, there's not very many, there's like 5 million.
It's because everyone knows an All Black.
Total in the whole country. Because everyone knows an All Black. And I do know an All Black. And,
which one?
Oh God, I can't remember his name. I mean, at a barbecue. So I'm. It's not like it's not like we're on.
He talks about you all the time. He's going to be crushed.
He talks about me all the time. We do actually have the phone number of an All Black captain, and I'll sell it to the listeners for.
No way. So what's the New Zealand dollar like at the moment? Is it? It could be. Is it worth me buying? Is it?
You'd be on it. It'd be a bargain for you. I guarantee. But the marathon of Afghanistan, the people who were promoting it, obviously they're Hazara. They're not, and when the Taliban came, my mother-in-law spent a lot of time in Afghanistan doing aid in Bamiyan. She worked for UN and she did other things. And she actually, she rescued, I think, 15 or 16 families when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban.
Wow.
And the organizer, Gould.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, right. So he lives in Auckland.
Does he?
And
I didn't know that.
So
he got out.
Yeah. So he got out, and Faladi got out, and a bunch of his mates, they all got out. So basically, we're putting the marathon of Afghanistan on in Auckland. We're doing it in exile this year.
That's so cool. And so your mum would have been there before they blew up the Buddha.
She was here. So, no, she was there. Yeah. Yep. She was
Wow.
She'd been there.
It was the biggest. The biggest Buddha in the world at that time, I think. Well, it was of all time. Yeah. Oh wow! I mean, that's crazy because now I'm still like we give 1% of our profits to the running charity and Free to Run, who are the organisation that organise.
Wow.
They still organise women's running in areas of conflict in Bamyan, and and Stephanie Case. You should get her on the podcast. She's just
cool,
amazing in everything she does. She's just amazing. Just a wonderful person. There's loads of links to it and life changing in many ways, and certainly more than mine.
Yeah. Oh, it's just if you the Taliban actually rang him and were like, "Hey, do you want to come back and put the marathon on?" And he was like, "Can girls do it?" And they were like, "Click."
No way! You're kidding me.
Yeah. Would you like to come back and put the marathon on? I don't think I do.
Although
I think I'd stay here.
Yeah,
I know.
It's hard, isn't it? Because
it's very simplistic. It's a very simplistic answer to do that, right? Because it's your home.
And also you never know what that invite really is with the Taliban. And also, even if it is a genuine invite from one person, it just takes some over testosteroned other person who's got a gun. The thing is, you almost the power of something like the Afghan marathon is, and even the power if women aren't allowed to run it would be the stories. Even if the men were running it, they'd be able. The only person, and there may be one guy. The guy came third, I think. Probably was the only Afghan male to run the whole thing, walk. Everyone else was on motorbikes, which was hilarious because.
Yes, that's what they were saying. They were like, "How do you stop people from cheating?" It's like, well, we've got GPS. They're like, well, don't know.
And there was a cat and mouse with this guy who was. I basically had the shits for about 3 days in advance. And so I was dying at my ass, but then I was just keeping this guy in view. So you could see that he wanted to jump on a bike, but at the same point, he knew he couldn't really do it when I was in view. And I kept on just keeping him there, like just finding it quite funny. But there may have been a guy in third who walked the whole thing. We can never be sure, but the first female finisher ran the whole thing. And so even if it persisted with just men, which obviously but positives and negatives, the story would have lasted. That you know who did run this, a female, and they wouldn't be able to. Yeah. That legend would have continued. That's the thing. And that's why it was so powerful, is to see countries where women are second-class citizens, where people actually have to. There's cognitive disconnect, or come on the phrase. They're having to recompute what they're seeing, what they're believing about women, because they can physically see what I believe is no longer true, because this woman has just run the whole thing and none of the men could. And it was mind-blowing to see.
Well, I mean, let's actually recognize. I mean, when did the women's marathon come into the Olympics? Was it 80?
Yeah.
Was it LA?
Yeah, probably would be, because
84?
Was it Catherine Switzer was 70?
Catherine Switzer, yeah,
70.
No, she was. When did she run? 67.
Oh, was it 67?
She
ran
wow.
Boston
for the. Yeah. It was a long. It was.
Although, do you know who the first woman to run a marathon? Pikes Peak in America. People forget it. Yeah, a trail marathon.
Really?
Yeah. I can't remember the date, but before Catherine Switzer. Yeah.
I mean, that's good, isn't it? It was always going to be. It's edifying that it was trail first.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, probably more, more storied. But I mean, still, like, Roger and Catherine, they live here half the year. So they live in Wellington half the year. They live in New York State half the year, and they're still both. Yeah. So her husband, Roger Robinson, the author, proponent. He's in his 80s. He's 84, I think, and he's the world champion in his age group for the cross country.
No way.
So they're both.
You've got to get her to do the Afghan marathon. If anything that speaks to the volume of the importance of women doing marathons, I mean that seems like a marriage made in heaven. Getting her to be the first one that isn't in Afghanistan because they won't let women run. That seems full circle.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't actually. I'm gonna put that out there. Hopefully,
get it, make it happen.
we can make that happen. Look, I mean, you talked about podcasting, and there's a good pivot. I mean, 2016, you started Bad Boy Running podcast. Whatever possessed you?
Was it 2016? Yeah, probably was.
It was.
Maybe in my head, I thought this feels like longer. Weirdly, just.
It's not.
Yeah, it's strange because it's 8 years. If you think back to 8 years of anyone's life, it was mainly just because we didn't hear anything. There's nothing in the media at the time, and this was before Instagram and Facebook was. You might get athletes pages, or we had Runner's World, we had Trail Running Mag, but I'd always go down the pub with my friends and we'd have really fun conversations about running. And it almost was like that didn't exist, where all of the running mags were focused on, and I just said have to be financially focused on newer runners. And it was, how to, what clothes to wear. And, no one was talking about shitting themselves at the back of Lidl's car park or, oh, sorry, I can't remember if I can swear. It was apologies. Well, I'll stop anyway. Or whether, or just actually talking about when races go completely terrible, or slagging off a race for being awful, or there was all these elements of like the whole of our running life didn't exist in magazines or anywhere we could see, and even turning up to the London Marathon Expo. Really lovely thing where you listen to like nice people tell you useful advice. You're like, I'm just so bored with this. Like, running's really not that complex, and yet there's ream after ream to all these things that aren't fun. So we just thought, why don't we give it a go? And the first episodes, the sound quality was god awful for probably about 100 episodes even. I mean, our poor listeners. But then there was nothing else out there really comparable. And so people fought through it despite the quality of the audio. And yeah, and now it's strange. It's there's so many running podcasts now, and which is great in some ways, but I also, it makes it harder for us because it used to be we'd invite someone on the podcast and they'd be like, I've heard of you. I've been waiting for the call. I'm like really honored. I'm definitely coming. Whereas now they get so many invites, and they're now being invited by someone with like 200,000 Instagram followers. And we're like, we don't really do Instagram. So I know we're messaging you through Instagram and it looks like no one cares about us, and maybe no one does care about us, but we think you'll give a better interview on our podcast, and we think you'll enjoy it more, and we think you'll have more of an impact because we're listened to by a lot of influential people. But it just means it can take the time lapse between messaging someone and them getting back to us now can be like a year and a half, and someone's like, oh, I've just seen this invite from a year and a half ago. Sure, I'll do your podcast. But it's a lot harder now I find it easier than ever to find guests I want to have on. Like, there's more stories than ever, which is great. There's more voices than ever. And I still think no one has the voice we do. But it's harder than ever but then, we had Paula Ratcliffe on 3-4 weeks ago, but I've had her email address for, I'm going to say 5 years. And I've not used it because I've just thought now's not the time to email. And there's various people, like you've got your Kipchoge's, your Mo Farahs. I've got the contact details lined up, but still I haven't asked them because I just thought I wouldn't say no to me yet. And, I've met Paula, I've interviewed her on stage twice. It's still not been quite right. And then I suddenly saw she was doing some marathon training programs, and you can get her to be your coach. I'm like, this is the moment. I emailed her and she emailed back in the day and like, yes. So actually I think you almost need now, unless you're an influencer with 200,000 people, who's probably going to be an awful host because you're used to everyone listening to yourself. Whereas actually a good interviewer just ask questions. I think it's hard to get into it now and have a unique voice or a distinct voice, and or even find an audience, because you need momentum. You need a feedback loop of feedback from the you want your users to feel connected to the content, that they understand what you're saying. And especially we've got our own lexicography. We have so many phrases that explain situations where if you, for example, I'm trying to think the Banks method of training is where you get absolutely shit-faced, you get carried out of a pub and you run race the next morning. And that's off the back of a story of one of the podcast listeners who did that at our Christmas party. So there's all these phrases and things, and you almost it's hard to grow your own community now when there's so many distractions, so many run crews, so many podcasts. And I think you need that connection with your listenership to actually properly enjoy it, and also to actually help people and to actually be part of someone's life.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Being we started 2018, so not quite as long as you, but still a size
to have lasted this long.
As you say, it feels like longer.
Yeah.
And not that it's not like absolute privilege.
Your son wasn't a teenager, was he?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
No, sorry. In my head, he's 18. No, he's 20. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, he's 20, and the girls weren't teenagers either. So, our kids were younger, and things were a lot different globally. But I mean, what do you make this proliferation of running crews? It seems like if everyone's not in a running crew, they're just
it's amazing. I think it's amazing. There's always an element of, I'm now an old guy. So obviously anything that you're not in, I want to be involved in everything. And so there's an element of I think it's very easy to look at things with a as an outsider. But I was talking to we've just done a podcast actually about the future of trail running in the UK and how it's being devastated basically by UTMB, and it's horrific. Like there's I think 25 races closed in the southwest in the last year, like gone bust. It's just so bad. But one of the things that the guy called James Elfson, who's an amazing individual, Centurion Running, South Downs Ways is one of his big races. He was saying how I was saying to him that he doesn't connect at all with this new generation, because the growth in sport that we're seeing statistically from the brands for the crews is females in their 20s. It's massive growth, partly because they were underrepresented, but also people that don't necessarily want to race. They're not running isn't a sport to them. It's a social activity, and there's this amazing race. It's an amazing event called Love Trails, which is just a joyous festival of running with really cool DJs and like midnight runs, and he was saying how they're all too cool for him, and I think that's the perception of a lot of these crews. They're too cool, but actually I've joined a few running clubs since I've had Hercules. We've basically got an 8-month-old, so I'm no longer able to train hard or have time to run, so actually I've just turned up where I can take a baby and run with some people. And I think actually what a lot of them are, people want community, but actually a lot of them is just showing, is almost creating joy. People want to have a joyous time in a way that previously, run clubs haven't done that. Running clubs have been where you go to train hard. And by nature, I think a lot of runners are quite introverted, not necessarily that good at, welcoming people. And, I've been at many run clubs like that, even though they're super friendly, super lovely people. If you come as someone who's feeling insecure about your run speed and you're suddenly asked how fast you are, which is done so that you're not dropped, so that you'll match with someone but you feel like you're judged, and the chances are you're going to be slow compared to everyone there. And the chances are you may be dropped, or you're going to feel terrible because someone's going to have to sacrifice their session to run with you around a part of London so you don't get lost. So they've changed it now, and I think there was an element of run clubs that were founder-led, that were almost ego, and that's the thing. There's now there's been this progression, and I don't get a sense of how Auckland is, but London has, not maybe hundreds, but probably up to 100 run clubs now, run crews. And they've also got to the stage where some of them, the founders now, are getting old and are getting disconnected from their community. And actually it's creating growing problems. And some of them have been founded for an ego, and because someone wants a platform, but someone wants to make money, or someone wants status or free stuff, and some of them are done because people are promoting a business. Some of them are done because people haven't seen people like them running, and so there's a whole within that. There's amazingness. There's like some things that I think aren't great, but actually most of the run crews I've been to, you turn up and it's full of positive people who are trying to get some exercise in and trying to connect with others and feel part of a community. And that can only be a good thing. And I think the pride in which people have of, because I won't say which ones I've gone, some of the ones I've gone to, I turn up and I think, this is kind of rubbish, but you'll love it because if I think of the Hash House Harriers, it's so fun. Like there's a trail set, you exploring like a treasure hunt round parts of a city that you don't know. And you'll turn up to other places and they'll do the same 5K run around a part that at a pace that's just a normal pace. Some people have their headphones in. I went to chat to someone, she had her headphones in for the whole run, didn't talk to anyone. I'm like, this is some bullshit right here. Sorry, this is some BS. Okay,
no, you can
this
say
is some bullshit right here. Like,
we're not
Yeah, true. Sorry, big man. And yeah, like some of them is like, if I became part of this community, I would make within like a week 3 changes that would make it so much better for everyone. But people love it because actually people are coming into a city where we're more disconnected than ever. London hasn't returned to pre-COVID days. People still want to work from home. Like, I don't understand that. Like we are adults, but we don't know what's best for us. This isn't my launch for being for being president or anything, but we're social animals. Even if we're introverts, it's good for us to meet people, to mix. And I think so many people now are working from home, and running has almost become the default sport because it's easier. And actually these communities people aren't making friendship through work in the way they were. The pubs in central London, in the city, they're still busy on a Thursday night, but they're not as busy on a Wednesday night as they used to be, or a Tuesday night.
Right.
And people aren't in the office 5 days a week. We're not getting those social, and so actually these are becoming the friendship groups, the dating clubs of people's lives now. And actually, I think friendships built off fitness is so good, because you not only you've got that commonality, but it's more likely you're going to stay fit and healthy. If you're wanting to catch up with friends who you know you can go for a run, who you know might want to sign up for a race, who you know when you travel to a city actually are going to get a shakeout jog to explore, it just it removes all these obstacles to motivation, to running. And so actually I'm hoping, instead of there was a point 10 years ago where 1, 2, 3, 4 of my female friends became yoga instructors. And I just thought, like, I'm happy for you. Well, no, I'm not happy for you, because to me that was a reaction to them not being happy in their jobs or being a bit lost in their lives. But to me, yoga became this thing that I personally don't think is very good for people. I don't think people are very healthy from doing a yoga class or 2 a week. I don't think it massively changes people's physiology, or even it makes you relax. But I don't think I don't think people go to yoga classes as much as they do 10 years ago. I don't think it's a lifelong relationship with fitness and health. Whereas having friends who are runners is, because you can always meet up for a park run. You can always meet up for a jog. And so I'm hoping this is going to have this transformational change on the health life of people in their 40s, because people who become runners in their 20s and their 30s often are lifelong runners, whereas people that play team sports in their 20s then get injured and then stop doing sport. And so I'm hoping it's this amazing force. And the great thing is, people feel really connected to these crews because they're so individual and personalized and localized to them.
Yeah, you're right. I've no rejoinder from that. It's, and I was just reflecting. It's funny, isn't it? I was listening to something the other night. I was going for a run, and they were talking about between D-Day and Dunkirk was the same between the pandemic starting and today.
Wow.
Yeah. Right. I was like, oh, that sort of puts it in perspective of what and talk about a generational stress impacted them for a long time. In some ways you think like that was years ago.
Yeah.
In other times you think like stuff sort of surfed. I think when that sort of post, people are still kind of processing what happened. And I'm lucky enough that I got to go to work every day I went to work. I don't think I worked a day from home. Well, I couldn't with my job. I was, in work every day. As stressful as that was, I got to see other human beings. I got to go somewhere and come back somewhere, and socialize, navigate, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's been I think they're pretty linked, eh?
Yeah,
those
massive.
two things at once. And I wonder about that person with the headphones too. Maybe that's a huge step for them going out.
Yeah,
and actually
true. Absolutely.
engaging,
And I shouldn't judge because I'm not in their shoes. Yeah.
No, look, it's annoying when you're running with people and they get headphones in. It's super, it's like, what?
Well, I think there's an element of because we filter it in our own way. And to me, that says, I don't want to be talked to by other people, which probably means men, and then therefore says, I'm kind of therefore painting the guys in this group as being creepy dudes, which may be true, but you at least gives a chance to connect with you, to show you that we can be friends. That's what frustrates me, is that I think I'm very good with connecting with people because I like everyone, and so it just frustrates me. I'm like, I want to be your friend, and you're not letting me be your friend.
Mm. And I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? And that's because you don't understand, or we don't understand what that other person's experience. Yeah. And it's a hard thing. But that's also the beauty of it, right? Because human beings being social animals, it's messy sometimes, right? It's like, it's that kind of, and that's how we learn to be social animals, is by
and maybe, you know, in 2 weeks' time she'll only have one earring, or she'll have like the bone ones, or
I run in the bone conducting headphones. I really like them. People say you can maintain sensory awareness, and bollocks, you can. It's just like it's going in the same. If it's just next to the hole, you know, they're better than, say, something like this.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what's been your what's been the most unexpected highlight of your podcasting career?
Oh, I mean, the Golden Trail job, completely random. I don't even know about it. So I've always been quite good at networking, and I interviewed the athlete manager for Salomon with the intent of hearing his stories, because I thought they'd be Greg Valet, and just because I thought it'd be interesting to actually hear how he does his job. But also at the back of my mind, I was thinking, if he likes me, he can introduce me to all his athletes, and suddenly I've got 10 more amazing guests. But then just got an email saying, we're driving around on our mini moon in lockdown. Just got an email saying, David, do you want to come on tour with us for 6 weeks and present the Golden Trail? That was it. Yes or no? So, and there's not many moments when I think in life we're all hoping for this random bit of luck, this random email, and actually it happened to me. And I was just driving with my missus. I sat next to her and just went, holy F. And she said, what? And we were like, oh my God. So that is probably, it led to it led to a not really a career change, because I was, at the time I was, 100% Caffeine Bullet, and in podcasts we've never made a single penny from it. But yeah, that was.
I thought we were the only ones.
Well, that's why we survived. I think you can tell the ones that make money aren't around because they've gone for money, and it's, unless you're massive, or they have 12-minute adverts at the beginning of each podcast.
Yeah. For real.
But then I think it's kind of almost the small moments that it's when you meet someone who you don't know the impact you're having in life as people, even. And this is what we have with children, right? And they're friends, and you never know the small impact you can have, or where if you just help someone, you do a nice good thing, but there's some people where you've stopped them committing suicide because they've just found something funny and thought, actually I'm gonna go for another run, or or someone's around. Continued, someone's actually taken up running, or someone's like you. It's strange. You kind of we didn't really have a motivation for doing it other than we thought it'd be fun, and but yeah, it's weird. It's the podcast has changed everything in my life, and I've never made a penny from the podcast. Like, I met my wife because of the people I met through, because of connections, like all these small things. And I think if you're doing what you love and kind of almost being a flame, that spreads light everywhere in ways you can't. And I'm not suggesting everyone has to do a podcast, but if you're being your best self, I mean, God, it sounds so cheesy, doesn't it?
Please don't.
But I mean it in a genuine way, rather than it
doesn't sound cheesy
than like
at
a
all.
social media way. Like, and it doesn't have to be something that anyone else. It could be you just love gardening. Just get on there, mate. Get digging. get growing some stuff. Because if you're, because I've almost had this conversation with a lot of friends who, we've got quite a few friends who've been trapped in London by the lifestyle and suddenly are in their 40s and want babies or want a partner, and they haven't got them because they've been living the life, and they're now desperately trying to date, and
Right.
they can't. They're almost, when you run towards something, it runs away. And I think actually, if you are kicking ass in who you are, it doesn't have to be success. It just means in like really loving what you do and enjoying your life, then people are attracted to that. And I think everything flows from that, where you'll transform people's lives in ways you couldn't have imagined, and you won't even know it's happened. And so that it's the elements of, because like Jody, my co-host, he wouldn't be running now if he wasn't a podcaster. There's no way. He was a journalist who was doing video reviews and then happened to work for Men's Running, and we met. But even him and his kids are like, that's changed his life. It's just a million small things where, just, I guess if I'm going to make any point, if you follow your passion, then you're never going to lose. And it doesn't have to be full-time work. You know, the podcast is still our side thing, but it's led to, like, Caffeine Bullet is now my full-time job, but the Golden Trail is like a side job that's like my dream job. And just all these things flow because when your energy is focused in an area, you're good at it because you love it. You're always thinking about it because it's not draining you all that time. Instead of that, you're focusing on is making you happier as well. Like, yes, yeah. So, but I can't think of any particular. Yeah.
I think you've covered it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of cheesiness and
And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? If it's not though, because that's the thing. If you'd said that time we got Elliot Kipchoge on, and he's got this and this is that, that's a status kind of get, right? Like, cool story, you got Elliot Kipchoge on, like, that's epic.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and do you know what I mean? You could be a miserable bastard, despite of that, but you're saying, hey, look, it's actually the engagements that we've had, it's the relationships that we formed, it's the You know,
and there's almost this, because we're so lucky now that we've got all these connections that we can suddenly make things happen. So we interviewed John McAvoy, who was an armed bank robber, who legend. He's bringing trail running to inner city kids, and I've met him we've interviewed a few times in the flesh, and we finally interviewed him. Not about his story, we never got onto it. We talk about the kids too much, but and suddenly, like, well, I can introduce you to a guy who's collecting used trainers that are in great condition. I can introduce you to these race series where they can get free play, and you're like, and actually, suddenly, now that I'm immersed in the community, you can make all these massively impactful connections that it's just an email to you, but suddenly all these inner city kids are running in trainers in races provided for free by Run Through or whoever the organization may be. And that's the really cool thing, is that suddenly you can have all these massive impact. Same with Free to Run, who are the organization that had the women's running club in Bamiyan, and they have them in Syria and Iraq and areas of conflict, Iran, messaging them and saying, look, we can get these trainers. And they're like, oh, I don't know we can't get them out there though. And so you just message DHL, who are big. They do all of our shipping for global like shipments for Caffeine Bullet, and like, you must have a charity pot, right? And suddenly you're like, wow, you can. It's weird. All these, I think you imagine that the biggest impact you'll have will be this beautiful moment where suddenly you can see the impact of changing someone's life. But actually, it's probably just a little intro you've done here, or you've got some influence now that you don't even know or really care about or notice, and you can just, one email can have this massive impact that you never know you never see the real impact. But I don't know what my point is there, but those are the elements that I love, is that suddenly I can help people really easily with connections.
Well, it's process versus goal, right? It's that thing we talk about training, we talk about, and on Dirt Church, we always talk about how both Eugene and I, and when we talk to other runners, races are cool. We love racing. Training for a race, that's the best, right? You get to that spot and you're like, this is amazing. I'm engaged in the process, and that's like this, right? There's never going to be a point where, and anything, you know, like you get your Golden Trail series, and then there's the other thing, but it's that step by step. Oh God, that sounds cheesy, isn't it? One foot in front of the other, it just keeps going. Tell me about Caffeine Bullet. I mean, that's a zig, right? Like you're running the marathon to sail tired, going, I want some caffeine. And then you're on, you know, not to Seinfeld it, yada, yada, yada. Then you're on bloody Dragon's Den. I mean,
I'm just texting in because it's 9:10 and that is when I have my meeting with the Caffeine Bullet team. So I've just messaged them, still on podcast. Well, we talk about it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was very much, that's the thing when, I just wanted the product. I always used to run with, do you have Pro Plus in New Zealand? They're these little caffeine tablets that are maybe 40 milligrams of caffeine. We always used to take them when we were students for studying. And when I was racing hard, there wasn't, you get the odd caffeine gel, but even now, like a goo gel is 30 milligrams, or in a shot blocks, you get a whole pack of shot blocks, which has maybe got 60 milligrams of caffeine. And actually, you need at least 1 milligram for an ergogenic effect, and 3 to 5, an optimal amount. It's a massive dose of caffeine. That's per kilogram you weigh. So for me, that's like 3 Red Bulls worth. Masses. So I used to cut out these smooth tabs that I'd then tuck under my watch for when I needed them, because I never start with caffeine. I'm not quick enough to finish marathons being blitzed on caffeine the whole way. You know, if you're doing a 2-hour marathon, maybe it's different. But and so I was racing in the marathon de Sab. I got drawn in. There's a guy called Jason Slarp. He's a lovely guy who was. We were running together. We became quite good buddies on that day, and I probably was just running a bit quicker than I should have been, because I was just delighting in his company, and then I completely fell apart. And
he probably
true. It's a strategy. Just be charming, and then
he's a real charming dude.
He's just lovely. He's a really nice guy.
You are charming.
And my whole strategy had been, it's 5-day race, 6-day race, was not to take caffeine in the first few days. And I suddenly needed this caffeine. I had one emergency. The rest was packed at the bottom of my bag, because you only have on to hand the things you need. I popped it out and I lost it. It like blew away in the sand. And I it's weird, because it sounds too much like a made up story, but I just thought, why am I having to do this? Like so I that's when I did a crowdfunder, and the obstacle race community, running community, they all kind of came in, and I didn't have the product yet, but I was like, we're going to make this product. And people, Kickstarter was exciting at the time. People were like, sure, I'll chuck in some cash. And then just went on LinkedIn and found a sports nutrition, well, not even a sports nutritionist, found a food scientist that said, like, how do I do this? And we were making batches in my kitchen of these weird chews, and for ages it didn't work. And we decided on a chew because it turned out the science, when you're chewing something, it absorbs the caffeine. Same with those strips, it's absorbed buccal, sublingually in the mouth and in the throat. So then we did the chew, and then because I had the Kickstarter, I had to do it. It wasn't one of those projects, because I do lots of boy projects, stupid man projects, where they don't always result in something. But this one's like, well, I've got to get a product out for them, and it just went from there. And because it was unique, nothing exists like it. You've got chewing gum, but there's no other caffeine chew in the market that is strong enough. But even then, it was because I was working at ZipCube, which is I co-founded a Airbnb for meeting rooms startup there. I had the podcast, I had all these other things. It was still more of a side project until my wife, I'd say almost, was it lockdown, just before lockdown, she was like, mate, what are you doing? Your Caffeine Bullet isn't your business. You're not making a career off Caffeine Bullet. I was almost just smelling my own farts, just loving the safety of saying I'm an entrepreneur because I've got this company. And she's like, look, I want to have a family soon, make it work or don't. And it's like, well, yeah, I probably should start advertising or marketing. And then it's just kicked off as soon as we started telling people about it, they wanted it. And we're now 5 people, and we're launching Electro Bullet, we're launching Brain Bullet, they're all complete. We're launching a Beta Morton gel, we're launching a product that is a gel designed to settle your stomach while you race. We just come up with it's really, really fun because we're doing well enough that, and I'm not someone I don't take money out of the business really. I don't want lots of money. My wife's successful, so it means we've got the space and the budget to just play with stuff. And so it's weird. I'm in this mad scientist role where
Nice.
We keep on creating new products. We've got a chewing gum that's 100% biodegradable, packaging and all, and of course sustained. So it's now become my career and my, I'm sure in 10 years' time it will be completely looking after my children's future and all this stuff. And well, even now really, but it's just become this product that, because I created something I genuinely wanted and made it exactly how I need it, it's just become this weird thing where it's a success. And I'm like, I didn't really do it for that. But I mean, and that's really cool when you talk about moments is I have probably the people that are most surprised by it. I'll still get the odd text every now and then from friends who after 5 years have finally tried it and being like, mate, this is great. Like I just thought it was you self-promoting this whole time, and and they're like, I actually use this, I love it. And you're like, yeah, mate, why? I'm not just banging this drum for like, so yeah, it's but then it's also, I'm very aware that caffeine, not everyone responds to caffeine. Not everyone should be taking caffeine. People shouldn't be taking caffeine all the time. I don't want people using caffeine bullets every day because it shouldn't be a crutch. It's not a crutch. You shouldn't be waking up and needing a coffee. If that's you, cut down on your coffee. And like, if you imagine Superman has these incredible powers, but if he was using them all day and he was tired, and when he then came to fly, he could only fly a foot. That's what we do with caffeine. Like, stop using it so that when you use it, it's rocket fuel.
It's good stuff, eh? It is really good stuff. And I commend, I've been using Caffeine Bullet for probably about a month now. Just trying it out and buggering around with it. The ginger.
Oh, ginger raws.
The ginger chews. They're just fantastic. Sorry, ginger raws. Yeah, they're fantastic because they don't taste sickly sweet and gross. They taste like something that they actually are.
Yeah.
So anything else, kudos to you, sir, for that. Hey, look, I'm really aware that you've given up your morning for us. I just want to ask you one more question to finish off. It's the same question we ask everyone who comes on Dirt Church Radio, and that's David Hellard. What's been your greatest run ever?
Oh man, it's so hard, isn't it? I've had so many amazing moments. I knew you were going to ask this as well, obviously, because I listen to the podcast. It's got to be Comrades for me. I don't want to take up too much time. I had a choice of three. One of them was I was on my friend's stag do. I was organising the stag do. We went to Lake Garda, and I did a 6 mile run up and I did a 6 mile run down, which was the most fun run I've ever had because I was overtaking mountain bikers, legging it down, just complete joy in the sun, hung over to hell, but not just that. It was almost like I was high on drugs. It was so beautiful. That was third. It's Comrades, and I think it's the greatest run on earth, other than maybe the Beer Lovers Marathon for very different reasons. It's if you runners don't know it, it's over 100 years old. I can't think of any race I've been to that's even close to how important this race is to a nation. It's a national identity. You don't get good South African marathon runners because Comrades is their standard. If you're we've interviewed like the Bang, was their trail champion, and no one cares about any of his amazing results because it's not Comrades. And I've never done a race where you start at the beginning and people are crying from Shosalasa playing out. You're surrounded. There's not many white people, which is amazing as well to be, but also to just know how important it is for this nation, how it was the first race black people could beat white people. It's got a massive connection with the story of apartheid and overcoming that. And it's where it's where carbohydrate drinks were created by Tim Noakes with Bruce Fordyce.
Tim Noakes,
before he went crazy on COVID rants.
He
did. We had a couple of interviews with him, quite fun. But it was one of those races where my now wife and I, we trained for it together. You've got to run a marathon 4 months prior to get in your start pen. You're then given a number based on your time. The fastest marathon qualifying time is number 1. It's brilliant. So you everywhere you go, you look around, you see who's there. You're like, all the way through the race, you're like, oh, that person's, I should be ahead of them, or they're ahead of me. We went to Seville to run her qualifying time, and she wanted to do a sub 3:20. I paced around it, which was this just amazing experience in itself. Seville, another amazing marathon. Like it's like the Tour de France when you run through the city. And at about 18 mile mark, 20 mile mark, I said to her, look, if you want to go sub 3:15, like elite championship qualifier, I reckon we can do it, but you've got to commit. And she was like, let's go. So this was all part of our journey for Comrades. I got to see my wife in a way I'd never seen her before, where I've never been so much admiration. She gutted out like a sub 3:15 marathon, was absolutely in bits by then. I was like, this is incredible. But yeah, so we then did Comrades, where every single hill has a historic name, where you run, that someone died on one of these hills, or this is where this happened, or the whole of your training is building up to that with these amazing stories. So you're running around where everything is a story. And everyone has different coloured numbers on how many times they've run it, and they've got their numbers of which start they are, and they're telling all. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful, incredible race. I did the down year, which is 4,000 meters of descent, 2,000 up. We got to 60. And in my head I was like, get to 60k. I love downhill running, and then you've got a 30k sprint to the line. I didn't have a time in mind. I knew I wanted to go sub 30 to get a silver. Suddenly looked and I was like, I guess I'm on for a sub 7. So then that became my goal. I went at 60k Coca-Cola. Sorry, it's a long story. I know it should have been a short, but Coca-Cola did this amazing piece of marketing where you could record a video for someone else. And when they came through the 60K mark, it would play the video on the big screen. So I recorded a video for my wife. Weirdly, she thought I was going to propose. I actually recorded a video where I took all my clothes off in the video and said, "This is waiting for you at the finish line, baby." Spur of the moment thing. But when I came through the 60K mark, I was the first person that had a video made for them, because all the people ahead were, just serious runners, really. And so it suddenly came up, and it was just this emotional moment. So I'm going to tear up now, where I suddenly saw my wife giving this surprise message, and I had the ring because I knew I was going to propose to her.
Oh
God, I didn't see this coming, and yeah. So I then had like this 30K of just this amazing moment, knowing she was coming in, and it was just incredible. She was so fast. She was only like 50 minutes behind me, and then I got to propose to her at the finish line in front of 30,000 people. It was just from start to finish, that race is incredible, and then for forever, it's going to be this massive part of our life. And so even without that, the race is, I think, the most special race on earth, and people should absolutely have it as their bucket list. And there's all these other parts. There's the pace trains have like 300 people in them. They have a different temperature in the middle, where they need to pass liquid through like a military operation.
Right.
Because they can't get, and it's like 4 or 5 degrees hotter in the middle of it all. And if you don't finish at 12 hours, you don't get, you're not even on the finishing sheet, and people are having to be dragged, and people are screaming. It's just, I've never...
They do the back. They stand with their back to them. They stand out and they block them.
The guy pulls the gun, not looking at the finish line, so he's not influenced by someone sprinting. Everyone stays behind in the stadium to cheer after. There's nothing even close. Nothing. I love London Marathon so much, but there's nothing I've ever done that is remotely close to Comrades.
Wow, that's amazing. Look, I mean, we've had it on before, but what an amazing story. Look, David, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
For coming on to Church Radio. Yeah, man, it's been an absolute pleasure. And
can I just mention Fuel Me, who are a lovely New Zealand website, Aussie New Zealand website. They've partnered with us to get the products out to you guys. And I just want to, and that she's just Janine is a wonderful person. So I just want to make sure that people know, if you're going to, you can buy, I think, stuff on Amazon, and that's buying from us, but buy it from her. She's lovely.
Fuelme.co.nz. So good. So good. All right, man. Well, look, thank you very much, and take care.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. It's been great.
It's been real cool, and hope to see you down here one day, and we'll...
Yeah, for sure. That will happen. And likewise, if you're ever in London, let me know.
Tears in the greatest run ever. Is it? Have we had?
No.
If not for a long time. No. If so, not for a long time.
We haven't. I was really, and I don't know if you looked at the video, like I was just smiling my head off, not at his distress. Well, it wasn't distress, but at the fact that, his emotions. And this is a guy, you can tell he's a wheeler dealer. He's that kind of, it's a steal, it's a sale of the century kind of guy. And,
Bad boy running brings the energy.
That's right. Exactly. It was cool to catch up with a fellow traveller as well on the we've been doing this a long time. They've been doing it even longer, and that was cool too. But can't wait to catch up with him when he comes to Aotearoa for a run. And all of you, go check out Bad Boy Running Podcast, and actually also go check out Caffeine Bullet, because I have to say they're pretty damn good. But gibbering away in the car park, this is we're actually quite lucky that there hasn't been
timed it quite well.
Yeah, it's not been a cavalcade of runners or horse-drawn carts or anything
Or
like
the
that.
gun club.
The gun club turning up.
Imagine if they caught us something. Anyway,
Oh, look, there'd be questions asked, mate.
there would be.
There'd be what are you
There would
two
be.
doing in there?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Let's get out of here before they arrive.
thank you very much for tuning in. We're on social media at Dirt Church Radio. You can email us at dirtchurchradio@gmail.com. Now, don't forget to sign up to the new podcast and newsletter.
Don't forget to send in your greatest one ever. Be like Ben. We love hearing them. Send your one into us, dirtchurchradio@gmail.com.
Thanks to our supporters Further Faster, Currans and Squadron, and to our Substack subscribers in the DCR Aid Station crew. Now, stay tuned for our show in 2 weeks. We have another great guest lined up, and check out our DCR Aid Station pod next week.
Hey, Cornay. Hey, Corna. Thanks, Rigby.